And welcome back, everyone. We hope you had a nice, enjoyable networking break. You might met some new amazing people. I think, as I said earlier, we have now people for over 500 people from over 45 countries with us. And now we're going to go to our second panel titled Opportunities in Battery Data Analytics. I'm very excited to have the founders, actually all the co-founders of 4 really exciting and breakthrough companies and startups in the battery data space. So we got Tal with us from Voltaiq, the co-founder and CEO. We got Michael with us, co-founder and co-CEO from TWAICE, and Claudius, co-founder and CEO of Diagnostics, as well as Kai from ACCURE Battery Intelligence, the founder from there. So you can see lots of founders, and we actually have a surprise guest coming later, but we're gonna bring it up when the time comes. And yeah, so I think with this, maybe Catherine, should we bring them up?
Yes, we're looking forward to the session. Hi, everyone. Great to have you all back.
Thank you for having us.
Hey.
Hello.
Amazing. And I think maybe just to put into the context for people who are new to the battery data field, because you heard a bit about data also before, a bit on the earlier session, a bit of discussion of the battery passport, and battery usage data can also be part of that. So I think it's going to fit quite nicely in the discussion we had earlier. But now we really want to try to also address some of these topics, like how can we maximize the use of batteries? How can we optimize the development of them? And also how can we, have a really safe way to work with them as well. And I think, Catherine, how about you want to intro, but essentially ask our people to introduce themselves?
Yes, well, let's start from bright and early. Tal, would you like to go first?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Tal Scholklapper. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Voltaiq. Early career, I started as a material scientist developing materials for batteries and fuel cells. I was lucky enough to work with a whole range of different organizations, from Bosch for range extenders for vehicles all the way to grid scale power generation, and saw the challenges around battery data. Actually started a fuel cell company and got to really see that end to end, from development to manufacturing to field operations. And really that was inspiration for my teams when I started leading larger ones, as well as throughout the industry. There was a tremendous amount of battery data now being generated moving forward, and really organizations were struggling to make sense of all of this information. And so we realized there was a need for a large, end-to-end platform for battery information, not just from the vehicles and devices once they're in the field, but also those upstream processes around development, manufacturing, and all the intermediate steps. And what we've developed is what we call an enterprise battery intelligence solution that allows organizations to leverage all this data to very immediately speed up the engineering challenges and speed up the day-to-day processes from 200 to 20,000 X, as what we've seen in practice. And then at the end of the day, start to affect the larger business goals, help customers ensure their launch timelines for devices, help them ensure they don't have safety problems and fires in people's homes or systems on the grid, and really ensure that you could maximize the value of these systems longer term. Excited to be here.
Right, thanks so much, Tal. Well, let's move on to Kai. Kai, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Catherine, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Kai, electrical engineer by education, spent basically my entire career in batteries. Super happy to do so. I was head of, I think, the largest research group on on stationary battery systems in Europe for a couple of years. Had a stint at UCLA as a scholar and spent some time with Bosch in Singapore. And now at ACCURE, co-founder and CEO. We only started last year, but grew quite quickly to about 40 people now, and we monitor battery systems around the world, making them safer, more reliable, about 750 megawatt hours under management today. And happy to contribute some of our learnings and some of what we see in the field.
Perfect, thanks so much for that, Kai. Let's move on to Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Catherine. So hi everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Michael. I'm a mechatronics engineer by education. Afterwards did a PhD in the field of battery modeling, battery analytics. Essentially, my co-founder and I, we investigated second life of batteries. You all probably know what this means. And by that, we also investigated like the biggest problem with batteries nowadays. Batteries are aging, right? So everyone knows this from your cell phone. And this means like a lot of uncertainties when it really comes the battery behavior over lifetime, battery lifetime value also. So early on, we said, okay, we need to get rid of this uncertainty, and we want to like bring transparency into the whole battery life cycle. So really starting from development, going into operation, and then enabling potentially a second life. And for doing this, we actually started TWAICE. So we are a spin-off from Technical University of Munich. We've been founded around about 3.5 years ago. Now we are like 75 people, have raised 35 million euros, and essentially are really offering battery analytics all along the life cycle and to different industries. What this exactly means, I'm happy to talk about in a minute. But yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for the warm welcome.
Thanks for that teaser, Michael. And last but definitely not least, Claudius.
Catherine, thank you very much. And yeah, really, really excited to have that panel today. Very interesting. I mean, most of us have known each other, but have probably not been in such a panel. So yeah, my name is Claudius Jehle. I am a mechanical engineer with strong ties to mechatronics as well. And I also studied in Munich and in Delft, technical universities. I happened to start a PhD, which I unfortunately didn't finish, in a Fraunhofer Institute in 2012. And this was about battery modeling from field data, from electric vehicles. This institute in Dresden had the crazy idea already almost 10 years ago, or actually it was before I started, even some years earlier even, to produce with the German industry the first electric commercial vehicles, buses and the train and all sorts of weird things. And I had the chance to do my PhD in field data analytics, or started, as I said, and then became group manager of a battery field data analytics group, of which, well, in this position, we started to bring the knowledge of battery degradation modeling and monitoring into a product. This is what typically Fraunhofer does. And 2019, we spun off into volytica. And yeah, we are also monitoring battery systems, analyzing and giving easy, understandable information to the consumers of this data. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. So, you know, with what we've just ended off on battery passport and now moving on to battery data, we'd really love to hear your thoughts and in relation to the topic as well. Before we kickstart the topic, just really like to remind the audience here, we do, if you have any questions for the panel, please feel free to ask them now, because we always have a backlog of questions towards the end of the session, and we really want to leave you time for networking. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the comments, and we will share them with the panelists midway of the session. So without further ado, I'll pass on to Simon to kick us start.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Yeah, and it's a big honor in a way, not to have you all in one panel. So I want to say this. It's for me, it's really exciting, and you know, being a very big fan of battery data and having all of you here, I think it's couldn't be better. So I'm very excited for this. So I think we have lots of ground to cover. And I think one thing maybe also I think would be very interesting for the audience is if you maybe can bring some examples. Maybe if each of you can bring an example where battery data actually makes a difference. You know, if you can maybe talk about some of the work you've been doing, some of the use cases you have. And I think maybe we can do the same order. Tal, you want to kick us off again?
Sure. Yeah, so I think, you know, just one of the big topics that's been the news over the last number of months has really been the safety and, you know, issues with fires in battery systems. We've seen it with, you know, mass recalls now from General Motors, Hyundai, Ford, and others in the automotive space, but also on the utility side as well, with fires even from Tesla or from Fluence and others. And really, the way we look at the world, this is an end-to-end challenge. If you're only looking at the battery systems in the field, you're not able to often catch these things before the problems actually occur. So just looking at these problems more directly, what we're able to do with customers is identify bad batteries before they will go into thermal runaway or events. We often are able to actually spot this during the manufacturing end-of-line process, whether it's for battery cells or battery packs. We've also seen it on commissioning on large-scale energy storage systems. And ultimately, it doesn't stop there. It's not the identification of that problem. Whether you catch it there or it's the first fire, you need to be able to connect the dots to what actually caused that problem upstream. And it's typically something that happened in the manufacturing process. And so really, it's the key, taking that upfront data, being able to connect that to the critical to quality steps in the production process, determining what the root cause was, and ultimately being able to target which are the devices that are actually affected. What we're seeing is that these should not be fleet-wide recalls at the end of the day. This should be targeted to just those batteries that cause the problems on specific lines on specific days, etc. And so what we've done is be able to actually work with our customers to identify problems proactively before there are fires and they're dealing with reactively today. And then we're also connecting the dots to the upstream processes so that you could remediate during those phases before it becomes very costly. And similarly, we're using that to actually enhance the operations of some of these systems as well, enhance the yields coming out of these factories.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tal, for sharing. I'm sure there are going to be lots of questions. We're getting lots of questions coming in, which is fantastic. Kai, would you like, I think this was the order, right? Kai next?
Yeah, and I can just continue right where Tal ended, because I absolutely agree. Production quality, end-of-line testing is it's incredibly important, but it's not done enough. So, I think there's a huge benefit that can be leveraged with better data. This is actually something where we only, just very, very little have contact with. We're field data people. So we basically pick the things up that slip through, right? So where Tal hasn't been able to pick out the bad cells in the beginning and they have ended in the field, this is basically where we start. We look at the behavior, voltage, temperature, current. We extract OCVs and impedances from field data and spot anomalies. And actually, since last year, we have been able to spot 4 battery fires, and we were able to predict them correctly. 2 of them came after the event, so we only had the historic data. We couldn't prevent them anymore. But 2 actually came, they happened while we were monitoring them, and we could prevent them. And that's super cool, right? So I think this is really where data can make an impact. Of course, also things regarding health. There's a lot of applications in the marine sector where people are still doing manual capacity tests to make sure, is this ship still going to be able to serve this line for the next 3 months? And so we work with companies to replace that with digital capacity tests, which have a much better accuracy. And of course, you don't need to take the ship out of the water for 2 days, which is pretty cool. And I believe there's so many more use cases where digitalization will inevitably improve quality.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kai, for sharing. Michael.
Sure. So I actually want to talk about 3 examples. I mean, as said, the goal of TWAICE is really to provide battery analytics all along the life cycle. So things typically start in the development, right? So the development of the actual battery systems. And this is where essentially it is all about reducing time to market and reducing testing efforts. And this is where we work mostly with lab data. This is the data we might generate in our own laboratory in Munich or also by customers. And we actually then generate models out of this data which can simulate the battery behavior in its electrical, thermal, and aging way. And by doing that, then essentially we help our customers to speed up the cell selection process that I'm mentioning of the battery, but then also the lifetime analytics. and warranty investigations. So like 2 examples of which we are doing this right now are Porsche and Daimler. Once then these batteries get into the field, it's essentially all about really, as said, giving transparency into the battery behavior in the field. I mean, Kai, you've talked about this a lot. So I think, the audience probably gets the general understanding. I mean, it's all about really getting insights into the operation, how the batteries perform, like detecting anomalies, things like rising temperatures and so on, but also getting an understanding of the lifetime behavior and whether warranties can be fulfilled or not. So in this case, we do this mostly with like time continuous data, also like aggregated data, like load collective and so on. And this is also one unique thing about our platform, that we actually can deal with all these different data types by various different algorithms. So like one different example also coming from a different industry is actually the bus fleet sector, in which we are working together, for instance, with Very City to provide these solutions to then operators and OEMs of electric buses actually. And then essentially once the vehicles are a few years old, right? I mean, they experienced a little bit over time. The question is always, what's the residual value of these batteries? And at some point, mostly like end of life, what can I still do with this battery? And this brings us to second life, where we essentially help customers to determine the residual value, so in terms of capacity, but also remaining useful life. And then essentially we also help to bring these batteries into second life and to determine like essential second life use cases. I mean, when you think about stationary storages, you can do different things with these storages. You can provide primary regulation, you serve peak shaving and so on. And for instance, one example is Audi, with whom we exactly investigate these questions for storages made out of used Audi e-tron batteries.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And then Claudius.
Yeah, I mean, of course, a lot of similarities. I wanted to start this this best practice or success story thing with one of my earliest encounters with the things that we were doing like almost like 8 years or 9 years ago. We started off with SOC, state of charge determination. This was the hot topic like 8 years ago. And only slowly, while working with industry, we realized, okay, I mean, this is a problem, and I might talk about that in a deep dive later on as well. But the challenges that our typical customers, and I assume the customers that we are all looking at, have are, of course, manifold, but they get into a high risk. Risk was one thing that we heard a lot. And the risk like has a phase if there is something wrong with the battery, either if it's burning, this is really the worst case, or it just doesn't perform as it was designed and warranted anymore, then there is an issue or claim. And who's to be blamed? Is it a misdesign, like an ex post analysis, if it was designed too small, or if there is other like design faults, not only the it's not only degradation. I mean, parts can fall off, like fuses can trip and stuff like that, but also yeah, the degradation, as I mentioned. So everything was always around warranty. Who is to be blamed? Is the customer using it correctly? Is it or is it rather a design mistake? And yeah, early on we started like really focusing on, like also Kai said, analyzing, getting that information out of the field data. Why is the degradation taking place? What can be done to mitigate it, to slow it down? What is an optimization of end-of-life criteria? I mean, you're making a priori assumptions. This first example of Michael, that you're making some design, you expect a fleet or a type of battery systems to behave like that and that and that, and to be operated like that and that and that, but does that really happen? And everything that we do for our typical customers, which are mainly in the commercial vehicle market, battery system manufacturers or the vehicle manufacturers, depending a bit on the who takes the risk, is always the same question. Why is why is there a deviation from the design? What are the reasons? How can we mitigate it? And is our independent assessment proof to mitigate a potential claim? And this is also, I mean, this is the unifying theme that has been with us for the last years. Typically, the batteries are, I mean, all of you know, very expensive. There's a lot of money involved. And once there is a potential risk involved, everybody is pointing fingers to each other, who's to be blamed. And yeah, we're trying to bring some objectivity into that, and this is what we've done ever since. And yeah, as I said, typical customers I already mentioned. We are getting a lot of requests lately that a lot of the first life fleets coming towards their end of their life, and then the question is, can I operate a vehicle outside the warranty, or can I not? Who decides that, and who takes the risk in the end? These are things that are with us in our daily business. Typically.
Thank you so much, Claudius, and everyone, Michael, Kai, and Tal as well for sharing these examples. And we thought actually it could be fun to bring in a special guest. So we brought one on, you know, that can be a first. Hey, Fiona, special guest.
Hi.
Good to see you. Amazing.
So,
yes, please go.
No, I was going to quickly introduce myself, because I am from quite a different space in the market. So I run Octopus Electric Vehicles. We're part of the Octopus Energy Group. So we, particularly in the OEV, we can help you get the car, we can help you get a charger, we can help you get a smart energy tariff as well, so you can charge up in the middle of the night for green energy. We also run a big vehicle to grid project here in the UK, where we're using our car batteries to help support the grid and, you know, give it back to the grid at peak times. So that might be a topic of conversation later. But actually on the leasing space, it's really interesting, right? Because definitely when we're looking at the minute, our kind of mission is how do we make it as quick as possible and easy as possible for people to make that switch to EV. And having finance vehicles is really important. And we see some of the finance companies in the UK, and I imagine it's a more global problem as well, getting nervous about residual values, about that secondhand market. Are their cars going to be valued? Is this the right thing to do? Are you worried? I don't know if anyone's going to take it. And would you be worried? Would you be investing in these vehicles right now, ready for the secondhand market in a few years' time? And how would you be approaching this challenge if it were you?
Great question, Fiona. Thanks so much. I saw a lot of nodding at first. So now who wants to go first?
Maybe I can say one thing, because you directly addressed I love the leasing topic. One remark here is, some years ago, you probably would have told all of the leasing companies, do it, no problem, because batteries are typically what we see degrading not as fast as everybody's fearing or was fearing. But this is changing. We can see that as well. So as people like all of us are helping the industry to understand better what the battery in the field is really degrading like, they're making them smaller, reducing the buffers. So it will become a bit riskier in the future. And one thing to add before I hand over to my colleagues, there is also one trend that is surprising to a lot of people, especially in the passenger car area. Energy density is going up, prices are going down, lifetime is going down. They're not becoming, our hunger for range is being traded for safety, to put it very bluntly.
Yeah. So yeah, and to jump in, Fiona, I think it's a very reasonable question. I think that's probably what like most people are not like totally aware of, which are like the huge costs of batteries. I mean, they make up like 30 to 50% of the vehicle costs, right? And also these huge assets which get pushed into the market over the next years. And in the end, I think like what you raised, I mean, leasing companies, but also for the end customers, I mean, once these vehicles are in the field, the question is always, what's their residual value? I mean, what's the reselling value? Or when you're the buyer, how much are you going to pay for that? And of course, I mean, we can solve this by constantly monitoring all these vehicles, right? And then also doing state determination and always knowing the residual value. But what we also experienced, that this in some cases just is not possible. Yeah, or like some OEMs might do this by themselves, some are not. And then there's always this problem: do I want to trust an OEM and the SOH of an OEM or not? Do I want to have like rather a third party who gives me the residual value? And this is why we, like early on, actually partnered with the TÜV Rheinland in Germany, which is like one of the major certification institutes, because this is like third party, right? And a trustworthy. And yeah, I mean, we are working actually together with them to offer a solution also for this space, where you can quantify the residual value also with like a short test in a workshop. Yeah, so you hook up the car to like some tester. Then we do some magic for half an hour, and then essentially you get a certificate with the residual value for your car.
Yeah, I think in aggregate, we're seeing, many of these EV batteries are lasting much longer than their warranty periods. But the challenge is there are, a handful of these vehicles that don't last as long. And, dealing with this as a statistical problem, what we're seeing in practice is, the auction houses, the groups purchasing these used EVs don't have any confidence. Do I actually have one of those good EVs? And because of that, we're seeing residual values being driven down pretty dramatically. Used EVs are, reselling for, substantially lower than what you're seeing in traditional internal combustion engines, even though that battery does last longer. There's less maintenance costs on these vehicles. And what we've seen in the market actually is a fundamental breakdown in terms of data ability to support this kind of analysis. So you could either do very intensive, measurements on those batteries. In our belief, you'll actually have to do more than 30 minutes worth of testing to ascertain the health of the battery system. But at the end of the day, you need to actually have the upstream data. You need to know how that specific battery was manufactured, how it was operated. The amount of telematics data collected actually does need to increase. And ultimately, it's on the OEMs, because their captive finance organizations often hold the balance sheet on many of these vehicles to start providing that certainty and that data. And so for us, it's really been a focus on working directly with the OEMs to help them create the connectivity with this information and allow them create that insight so they could start providing that to their end customers, whether it's auction houses or end consumers, support those values of those EVs.
So just building on that then, right? So obviously I run a leasing business, so we're putting EVs out. We only do EVs, by the way. And we've got a bunch of funders that want to make sure that we are taking care of it. So are there like brands that are already doing things in this space that we should be aware of? And are there technology that we should be putting into the cars right now to be tracking how they're used, how they're charged, how that, and so forth, which then says, actually, this one's just been charged at this home charger, 7 kilowatts, it's totally fine. This one's been rapidly charged at the supercharger the entire time. Like, should we be gathering this data now so that in 3 years' time, we've basically got the equivalent of service book, when it comes to the auction house?
There's 4 people waiting to yell yes.
Not necessarily, but Kai, go first.
Well, I'm screaming yes. I think this really connects well with the discussion we had before on the battery passport, which aims to go in that direction. But I think some of the concepts that we see at the moment don't go far enough to really make an informed decision on whether this car, has a certain potential for second life, certain resale value, and all these things. But yeah, I mean, just by without having any battery modules, just classifying which percentage of the charges was a high current charge, right? This is obviously damaging the battery more than charging at home. But of course, if you have the models in the cloud and you can, just really crunch all those numbers, you can get to a very exact state estimation of the battery of the value. Because if you have the data, if you operate the charging points, right? There's another entry into what's happening with the data, with the battery that you already have. And the beauty of, I think, of software, of cloud computing, is it doesn't add many costs, right? It's something in the cloud. The differential costs of software are very low, and just leveraging the information that you already have has a huge value. And then I think the next point actually would be, do you want to be in charge of that yourself, or do you maybe have a risk taker, like an insurance company, that is basically taking away that complexity for you? I think, all the companies here in this call would be technology suppliers to risk takers, like insurance companies, like, banks, financiers. And I think we shouldn't bother like the general public with the complexity of battery aging. And this needs to be, it needs to go seamlessly, right?
Yeah, so I can directly hook in here. I mean, of course, like probably every one of us would say the more data, the better. But in the end, I mean, this also comes at a cost, right? I mean, as a cost for you as an end customer. I mean, this is effort if you need to plug in some OBD dongles or whatsoever. So in the end, perhaps the question is also, yes, the more data, the better. But where does the data come from, yeah, or where does it need to come from? And I think that's the nice thing with companies like us. I mean, we already have a lot of data. We generate data, some by ourselves in the lab, some by already existing customers. And then, I mean, when you think of, I don't know, like an Audi e-tron, I mean, we already have a bunch of data. So then we also can like make basically make an estimation about the SOH by just doing some really short measurements also with your car. And then you essentially save a lot of costs by not constantly needing to acquire a lot of data.
Can I ask another one? Well,
go ahead.
Go on. No, I was good. Go on.
I was going to say there was as far as one of the groups we've seen do one of the more comprehensive analyses of batteries in the field. It was a company just acquired by Cox Technologies. Spear's new technology is actually going in and doing deep, visual inspections and often measurements on these battery packs to ascertain their state of health. It ties actually very well into a lot of their Carfax and auction house offerings there. When you don't do that deeper measurement and you're trying to just look at field data, one of the fundamental breakdowns we see right now is organizations trying to basically feed off of the ODB data or very sparse telematics off of these vehicles, where you're essentially just trusting the vehicle's state of health, which we all know is not very trustworthy. And so it fundamentally comes down to creating that ability to get deeper data periodically off of the vehicles. And to do that at this stage, you actually need to work directly with OEMs to be able to unlock that information. And so it's less of an issue of needing the right sensors or telematics. That is all actually starting to be in place now with OEMs. It's just creating that level of trust and transparency across the ecosystem here.
If I may add one sentence, all agreed what has been said. If I were you now, I would just request or require from my suppliers, from the OEMs, to make it very tangible, once a year, an independent battery assessment. They have to take care about it because they are gathering the data anyways. But it has to be independent, not their own. And not, I mean, if they tell you how many fast charging has been taken place, what would you do with this information? You should already ask for the interpretation by an independent party.
And presumably they can get that remotely as connected cars? Like they don't, question mark.
Yes, I would say probably yes. At least you would probably get an estimation of, is it rather a problematic one to do an in-depth test, or is it a good one?
Yeah, I think, I mean, absolutely. That's I mean, something you might want to request. I mean, it's something which we actually also see already when I come back to bus fleets. I mean, this is actually like what like customers of ours or like the OEMs are also like doing. The question is always how like easy and coming to what Tal said, how accurately can you done this in real life? Because it's also like a huge pain when the OEM then requires you to, I don't know, drive your bus, like charge it like 3 times completely full, drive it completely empty, charge it full. So you don't want to like take your bus out of operation for a week, right? So I think it's really about precise solutions which are applicable in daily use and not in some laboratory conditions or like off use conditions.
I've got some other questions, but obviously I find this very interesting. What do you think could be the impact on the price of a vehicle after, say, 3 years? Like, are we talking this is, 1% of the vehicle? Is this 5%? Is it 10% of the vehicle? Like, what? I don't know. Or is it maybe it's in thousands? Maybe we should be talking euros in this scenario. But give me a ballpark or a range. Oh.
Percent. But this is the exact number. No, I would say something like at least 1%, 0.5% to 2% value can be is a reasonable number. I mean, TWAICE, you published it like 500 euros, 100 euros, 150 euros. I would say this is the impact that just knowing the quality could have.
May I say, I find it very, very cool that you bring your own calculator on a holiday.
And this is actually the one that I was using in high school already. Look at
impressed, Claudius.
Klasse 9B. I always have it with me. I'm so nerdy.
Really, there's a question from Jordan Cowley I've spotted, which is like, is there a market desire? What I see from leasing companies in the UK is that we're not I don't think onto this as much as we could be. And I wonder if there are in countries where there are more manufacturers, more R&D, are you seeing the leasing companies being more advanced thinking? And I guess to the point, there was a point earlier, which was the native finance houses, right? The OEM finance houses are like probably all over this. Is that fair? Do you see that? Or do you think it's still quite early stage?
I think it's pretty sporadic right now. You're seeing organizations leaning in, probably taking more risk than they otherwise should. We've actually heard of insurers actually losing quite a lot of money on early insurance policies they've made in the space because it is very expensive to replace a powertrain for a vehicle. It is 30 to 50% of the cost of that vehicle system. But I think organizations are trying to get more comfortable. They are making some experiments right now, essentially, but we're still in those early stages where they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, you have one quick point, Michael, and then let's go to other questions.
Yeah, I think as Tal said, early stage, but on the other hand side, I think there are like examples in both directions. So like both extremes. In some cases, batteries are not that good as imagined, but in others are very conservative. But yeah, I agree, like insurance policies, will become more and more for actually batteries. And also the need for third parties to monitor these insurance policies. For instance, this is also something we are doing with the Munich Re already for stationary storages. Because, in the long run, there's just a huge market for such policies. Because, as you can imagine, no OEM wants to have them in their balance sheet. These like huge amounts of battery assets. So this will happen over time. And yeah, we're actually also giving a webinar about this very soon to make some advertisement. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think, I hope, Fiona, I think you took something out of it. And I love it because we had a very interesting discussion also many years back about this topic. And I think you can all tell that Tal and Claudius and Michael and Kai are very knowledgeable and probably can share way more. And maybe there's some new future business opportunity. I have a feeling it could be. So maybe that's good for everyone. And maybe just looking at the time, we have 10 more minutes. I think it would be maybe good to also go a bit to audience questions, because I know there have been a lot. There have been many, so many people are interested. So Catherine, how about, do you want to put some to the panel?
Perfect. So let's start off with the first one that we have here. What are some of the unknown, unpopular, unique facts about the data behind the in-use or second life batteries that you have found that the world needs to know? Just maybe some short comments from everyone.
They're degrading slow.
Degrading slow? Not as fast as they expected.
I think the question also goes specifically to the data. So I would say, battery data, often needs a lot actually, and not a lot of handling and processing until you then really can apply actually battery analytics to it. And I think this is like something also like what we see with our customers, that we actually spend quite some time to also help them to find out how can they generate better battery data in terms of sampling frequencies, outliers, whatsoever. And it really also goes down to kind of the physical layer. I mean, that's also why we are working together with ADI, because like there's still, I would say, a lot of room when it comes to really battery management systems, more precise sensors, new measurement techniques, and so on.
It's super messy. And I think all of us spend 90% of their time on data engineering and 10% on battery science.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have a point on this?
Yeah, I'd say on our side, it's really about creating a platform for organizations to be able to leverage this data. We handle all that data engineering for our customers and let them or partners come in to do the fun data modeling side of it. And really, it's exactly the first point. It comes down to the quality of the data, and often with the traditional approach to telematics, where people are concerned about the cost of how much it takes to send that data, down to some of the equipment that's able to actually monitor these battery packs and systems. It's often missing or incomplete, a lot of the data. So there is some of that upfront learning to make sure that you get the right hardware in place, you get the right data collection frequencies, you're collecting the right tags off of the vehicle itself, and so. It's still an evolving process here in the space.
Right. Thanks for that. So I think the second question really built on that. So what are some of the main challenges and approaches to filter and transmit the amount of data from the field systems effectively?
How many time do we have left? Like 2 hours?
2 minutes.
Okay, I'm just going to say a few keywords and then hand it over. So we basically reverse engineer sensors. So we try to find the true value behind the measured value, systematic errors, statistical errors, right? If you have a current of 3 amps, it's not 3 amps. It could be anything between 0 and 5 for many applications. And so finding clusters of how each sensor, behaves in a certain pack, in a certain generation, is like the first thing you do. And then it's lots of outlier correction, lots of filtering, lots of statistical methods. I never thought in university that I had to use so much statistics, but here we are. and you can move on.
Yeah. Perhaps, we are like what you mentioned, yeah. Then I think it's also a lot about, at some point, data compression, yeah. Maybe in the vehicle or in the cloud. How can you actually compress data without losing all the aging relevant aspects of it? So things like load collectives and so on, etc.
Yeah, and one thing we've done also is partner with a company, Venium, that actually has algorithms that work with the OEMs and fleet operators to be able to send larger volumes of data through their networks without having to incur those high costs of sending over the cellular network. So it opportunistically goes through in cities and able to connect to Wi-Fi networks and others in order to send larger data volumes at the same cost for the OEMs. Because right now, a traditional approach for OEMs is we have some sort of data cap of how much information we could send at each time, and it's about opening up and changing that approach, showing them they can create value in terms of increasing residual values from these systems as well. But the approach is actually going to be, it's going to be compression, but overall it's going to be more data coming from these devices over time, and getting OEMs comfortable with the value of being able to see that data is really key.
Klaus, do you have a quick point on this? Otherwise, we go to the next
Nothing to add. Exactly. We probably face the same problems anyways every day. So exactly what I would have said.
Perfect. So maybe just one quick one also, adding on this one, is the data you can get at the moment enough, or do you need extra sensors? Maybe just a quick thought on this one. So, the battery health indication data, the voltage, temperature, etc., is sufficient, or do you need more? Any thoughts on this one?
I would say it's sufficient, and adding more would just make it would make the problem of economics of data transmission more severe. So I don't think we need more.
Plus
maybe
one
higher quality.
Yeah. I think, like, generally speaking, not more, definitely not. Also, we sometimes see, I mean, that you can have like a huge lever actually by just like improving some small things. So for instance, I mean, all of us probably know the importance of like an accurate and highly sampled ampere hour count when it comes to SOC calculation and such things. So yeah, this is something, I mean, when you have it, it's not like a huge cost, but it improves your data by a lot. And as said, I mean, this is why you also want to actually offer some data assessment to your customers to help them also with these kind of questions.
Yeah, as a platform provider, we're happy to take as much data as people want, but yes, agree that there is sufficient data, and it's about including the how you get that data and the resolution of it.
Fantastic. Maybe just really quick fire round now while I'm at it, because it's I think came up in multiple questions before, the role of vehicle to grid and second life, and also how to enable this, right? Like, for example, talking about vehicles, how can you maximize the use of it? Are there any thoughts on this one, maybe from the group, how this can maybe be enabled through data effective use and monitoring of data?
Maybe one remark on vehicle to grid. It's now very, I mean, it's in a lot of discussion, and the problem from the OEM and warranty perspective is that you are adding a usage profile. I mean, the fear is that you're adding a usage profile to a battery that was potentially not designed for that usage profile. So nobody wants to assume the risk for that, even if it could be beneficial even. So this is a problem, and in this problem of fear, actually monitoring could play a large role to show, though, the effects are not as huge as thought. So I think transparency on degradation, on adding another usage profile, adding this transparency by a company like ours could be beneficial to, or will probably be beneficial to vehicle-to-grid applications.
Yeah.
You need a cost function. If you don't know what an additional cycle will cost you in terms of degradation, no one will ever take this risk. And I think, you know, with different approaches, we're all working on this topic. Ultimately, you know, it's not just tracking degradation, but also predicting it. So this additional cycle, 10% SOC or 10% DOD, will give me aging costs of 25 cents. And if I can only make 21 cents on the trade, it's a net negative. So I shouldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, not much to add here. I mean, I think from a global standpoint, I mean, we really consider the transition to renewables and green mobility. It's super necessary and super useful. But the idea is always, how much do you harm your battery? And also how much do you harm it over lifetime, right? Because, I mean, these like additional cycles can mean something completely different at 10 years age or when compared to beginning of life. So yeah, you essentially need monitoring throughout the entire lifetime.
Amazing. And I think we're kind of running out of time, sorry, Tal. And maybe just really quick, if you have one wish for the coming year, or something you expect and hope for, you heard this question before, if you want to say like one sentence on it or 3 words. Tal, maybe, or Michael, or anybody wants to.
Yeah, I'd say more transparency in the industry is really key. So the information is there. Different parties just need to start connecting the dots in order to start helping accelerate the transition to electrification.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think my wish for next year, more people entering that space also. Really, I think in education and so on. I mean, as said, we are like in a huge transition. We need more people to achieve this. Also, from a personal standpoint, at TWAICE, we are constantly growing. So yeah, I mean, we need more people and more talent in that space.
Claudius, Kai, Fiona?
My 3 words. Oh, sorry, Fiona. No, my wish would be more transparency as well, or less fear around the topic of data and sharing data. This is too over prominent.
Fiona, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just all about being ambitious. We have to make the switch. We need to solve problems, sharing data, being open. and being able to go as quickly as we all can to make a massive transition impact in the world. Let's do it.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said, I wish that batteries would become, as good as they can. And I think they are now. It's pretty solid that we're on the way, that they're going to be, a key pillar of our energy and mobility system. And now I think we have to make sure that they're sustainable, that they're economic, and that, we're not building the next carbon volcano out of it. So they need to last long, they need to be safe. And so the whole discussion before, we need to tackle that.
Amazing. With this, such a big thank you for all of you to join us. Thanks again, Tal, Claudius, Michael, Kai, and Fiona for joining us. I think it was a really engaging session. I also love the background chats about brokerage of data. So it's fantastic. So it's going to be a lot of exciting, I think, developments for all of you. And so I think with this, we're going to close this panel. You can see already at the bottom, we have 3 deep dives coming up. Also one on battery data. You can hear more from Claudius there. There's another one on circular batteries, as well as ethical battery rating from Battery Associates. And also all of you, I think, are present on this event as well in booth. I think there's booth of yours, there's deep dives. So really, stay in touch. I think you can all tell, they can also tell great stories. So, keep talking to them, learn from them. Maybe they find new applications, and, they're all doing really exciting work, and I think really ambitious, have a really ambitious goal. So let's keep supporting them. And with this, also, this is the part, maybe the goodbye for Catherine, because for you, it's super late. It's in Taiwan. I don't even want to ask what time it is. But thanks so much for being with me and with us for the first session.
Yeah, great to see everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day. Definitely do all the networking that you can. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in the deep dives.
Thanks all.
And then in the networking. And one last thing, if you're a VIP, there's a VIP special and VIP session later on during the networking. If you want to hang out with some other VIPs, should be fun. Awesome. See you then. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.